How much do you sleep? How well do you sleep? And how consistently do you sleep well? Today we're going to discuss one of the most essential routes to happiness, our relationship to sleep. It can feel impossible to get enough sleep sometimes, but once we understand the physiology of sleep and learn the knowledge and tools we need to become strategic in optimizing our sleep, we can become healthier, happier, and increase our overall quality of life. Welcome to Root Cause of Happiness. I'm Dr. Sarah Bryn Morrow, licensed psychologist, therapeutic yoga teacher, and optimal wellness educator. I teach the physiology of mental health and the skills to overcome suffering at the root cause. My intention is to empower others to become increasingly resilient by understanding the many pieces of the puzzle to deep healing. Please join me as we explore the root cause of happiness. We often hear about the three main pillars of health: exercise, nutrition, and sleep. But the truth is, without sufficient sleep, we cannot be truly well. Exercise and nutrition will always fall short if we are consistently lacking sufficient quality sleep. We wish we could sleep well, but sometimes it can be difficult. Once we understand how the body works, the actual biology of sleep, we can become empowered with tools to become strategic. Today, I'm going to try to give you an efficient lecture on sleep to give you the most important behavioral tools, the most important environmental changes you can make to support your body being able to sleep well. So the very first thing I'd like to start with is helping you consider the way the body evolved to sleep. Human beings, until very recently, did not have artificial lighting or a thermostat to adjust the temperature of our homes. We very much lived with the rhythms of the natural world. When the sun came up, we had to get up. There was so much work to do. When the sun went down, we couldn't see much. We maybe had firelight to guide us, so we mostly slowed down, gathered around the fire, and had a wind down into the deep relaxation of sleep. We slept when it was dark, and when it was dark, it was cold. And when the sun came up, we rose, and the world warmed up, and so did our activity level. So our sleep cycle biologically evolved to be in rhythm with light and dark, with heat and with cooling. And we need to learn to create an environment for ourselves in which we're trying as best we can to live in those natural rhythms of the world. So the very first thing that's important to understand is that your melatonin production, the main hormone that regulates our sleep-wake cycle, is very much influenced by light and temperature. So if I could advise you on anything, it would be learning in the mornings to open your blinds, open your curtains, turn on overhead bright lights, and get up as early as you can around the time of sunrise. Once you are up, be active. It is best to exercise in the morning. It's often helpful to put on music with a nice energetic beat. It's really helpful if we can go outside, look up into the sky, get sunlight onto the retinas and also onto the skin. So you not only produce melatonin within the pineal gland of the brain, but you also have intracellular melatonin. And sunlight is the way that turns cholesterol into vitamin D converting to serotonin, serotonin becoming melatonin. So we are hormonally meant to be regulated by sun exposure and by the daylight hitting the retinas and telling the brain it is morning. It is time to turn off melatonin and come into this awake, alert, active part of the daily rhythm. The opposite of that is in the evening. After dinner, try to lower the lighting in your home. It's really helpful to think about avoiding artificial sense of sunlight. So bright lights overhead can trick your brain into thinking it's daytime, and that might delay melatonin production. Instead, in the evenings, we want lower lighting on the level of the horizon, more into those orange-red tones like the sunset. I kind of like those pink Himalayan salt lamps that give a nice, gentle, orangish tone. Often people who are on screens at night on their computer or watching TV will benefit from wearing the orange tone blue blocking type glasses, blocking out the blue light and helping to artificially create the light tones of sunset. We can also think about temperature. So it's helpful in the daytime to be more energetic, to be more active, and at nighttime to be more calm and mellow. This will shift some of the circulation and energy and temperature in the body. At nighttime, we want our bedroom cool. So it never used to stay the same temperature through the nighttime hours when we lived in accordance with the natural rhythms of the world. So it's very helpful to keep your bedroom at nighttime around 65 to maybe 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, this doesn't mean you need to sleep chilly. You can have a lot of blankets and be warm in your bed, but you'd like the air your body's breathing, the temperature of the skin on your face to be cool, as if it were the natural cool down of the world at nighttime. We can also think about the bedding that we sleep on. So a lot of doctors discourage memory foam because memory foam tends to hold the heat throughout the night, and that might cause middle of the night waking for some people, where you wake up in the middle of the night just because your body temperature is overheating. There's interesting science now showing these benefits of cooling mattresses or mattress pads. Or if you like the texture of memory foam, you might consider a gel mattress cover to help create a buffer so that the heat doesn't absorb into the memory foam mattress. If you do wake up overly warm, bring out your arms out of your blankets or your feet. Your hands and feet are very quick to shift your body temperature. So that can be a quick way to cool down. Or perhaps you might decide to get out of bed for just a moment. Try not to turn on very many lights. Get a glass of water, use the bathroom. Maybe leave your blankets pulled back and allow the actual temperature of your bed and your body to cool down. You can often go back to sleep then and get back to sleep better. So light and temperature are so essential at keeping our body in its natural sleep-wake cycle, the hormonal cycle of the circadian rhythm. We also have to think about our activity. What are we choosing in our self-care day to day? Exercise can really help with sleep, but if it's intense cardiovascular exercise, we should ideally do that earlier in the day, not stimulating the body too much in the evening hours. However, if you've been sitting all day, it's also not good to go to bed with a body that's feeling tense and restless. So it's very beneficial to do some light stretching before you get in bed. In the therapeutic yoga world, there's certain stretches and positions that are thought to help with sleep. One thing I always recommend people try are resting forward folds. So these just mean sitting on the ground in any leg position, lengthening first, folding forward, and then in that forward bend, softening, allowing the shoulders to round, the hands to be open and relax, softening the eyes, the jaw, the face. And in a forward bend, we tend to increase inner awareness. We tend to automatically notice the breath and begin to regulate the breath rhythm. We tend to notice thoughts in the mind and be more able to quiet the thinking brain. We tend to check in with ourselves and perhaps notice where we're holding tension or stress in the body. And from awareness, we can work on letting that tension go, softening and relaxing the body. So resting forward folds, whether you have your legs crossed, your legs out straight in a pike position, they can be in a V, in what we call a wide angle pose, or in a butterfly position called a bound angle pose in yoga. So any leg position, just coming into a gentle, restorative forward fold. Another forward bend that's very restful and relaxing is called child's pose. Most people probably have seen child's pose. If not, do a quick search on the internet to find directions. But you basically are just kneeling down, rounding the back over the legs, and coming into somewhat of a fetal position. This pose is thought to bring on the relaxation response in the body. It's called a self-soothing body posture. And so child's pose helps us really feel the movement of not just the front of the body, but also the back ribs as we breathe. It helps us go inward and notice and be able to come into some inner stillness and quiet the mind. The other thing to do before bed might be what's called legs up the wall. So this is where you lie on your back and your legs are up above you, whether against a wall, the side of your bed, or you could bend your knees and rest your lower legs on a chair seat. So in this leg inversion, we shift the circulation of the body, drawing the blood flow more towards the heart, and it tends to have an effect of initiating the relaxation response in the nervous system. So if you're feeling on edge or tense or restless, or if you know you've just been kind of sitting all day, do a little bit of stretching before you get in bed. Help your body start to wind down and come into a more dominant relaxation response in your nervous system, calming down that sympathetic nervous system stress response. Once we get in bed, though, sometimes the mind is just busy. It's often not worried or stressed out necessarily, but just processing. And so we have to learn strategies to quiet down the thinking mind. Often the reason we can't sleep is just because the brain is staying too active. And if the brain thinks there's important stuff going on and problems to solve and plans to make, it might just keep you awake to be on the safe side of making sure nothing goes undone or unattended to. So there's different strategies for anchoring the mind and quieting that thinking brain. One of the things I always recommend that people work on is lying down in bed and practicing breath awareness. The more that we can learn to pause and be aware of our breath, the more resilient we become over time. I often will go to bed and place one hand on my stomach, one hand on my heart, and just follow my breath for a minute or two. Typically, my mind will wander off and I'll just realize I've gotten distracted, and I'll try to come back to my breath again and again, just for a few minutes. This is training my brain to be aware of my breath, the anchor to the present moment. From breath awareness, I can choose how to breathe. So as you might have learned in my video on breathing to calm down, breathing to perk up, we can breathe in different ways to either stimulate or relax the brain and nervous system. And so to fall asleep, we want to make sure that we're breathing through the nose. The belly is rising and falling with the breath. So that means we're using the diaphragm to guide the breath and access the lower lungs, which help us feel relaxed and safe. We want to slow the exhale down and try to make sure that we're breathing in a nice, even, wave-like rhythm, equaling the length of inhale and exhale, and maybe even slowing down the exhale a little bit slower than the in-breath. Often, a way to anchor the thinking brain is to follow the breath and count each exhale. So this is a little bit similar to counting sheep, but I don't recommend an onward count indefinitely. You usually only want to count anything up to 10 and then start over. What will happen is if we continue to count upward, at some point the mind might start to worry or judge how long we've been tracking that thing, and we can start to feel a little panicked that we're never going to get to sleep. So trying to hold awareness on the breath. The inhale just occurs, we exhale, count 1. Next breath in, exhale, count 2. And if you can pay attention for 10 whole breaths, wonderful. Just start back over at 1. So you wouldn't do this for a long time, but it might be a way to help you settle down and quiet the thinking mind. Another behavior we can work on is what's called a body scan, or progressive muscle relaxation through visualization. There's many different techniques to do this, but the primary goal is just to relax yourself in a natural position, typically lying on your back, and begin to scan from the tips of your toes, the soles of your feet, up through the legs, the hands up the arms, the whole front of the body as well as the back of the body, and then in detail going through all the muscles throughout the face. And you might imagine in this body scan that there's a beautiful, healing, soothing light scanning slowly up the body, softening, relaxing, healing each little muscle group that light passes over. One thing we're doing here is intentionally relaxing the physical body, but we're also giving the mind something to focus on that's not related to busy thinking brain. We can also take what's called a mental vacation or do a visualization practice, where we could really picture anything in our mind, but it's often recommended that you visualize a beautiful scenery of some kind. So you might imagine that you're on a tropical beach somewhere, and you'd want to use all 5 of your senses to really imagine what would it really feel like if I was on the beach right now. What would be the sights I would see, the different colors, the landscape around me? What would be the smells of the ocean? What would be the sounds of the waves, of the birds or animals or people there? What would I feel? Cool water, warm, soft sand, soothing sunlight, perhaps. You could go into taste if you wanted to, but probably not essential. But the idea is to go into a detailed, very patient kind of exploration of imagery to kind of explore the sensations that would be there if you were in a beautiful, peaceful, restful place. So again, this gives your mind something to do that is not important, non-threatening, not related to real-life issues at all, but it keeps your mind occupied. It's almost impossible to get your brain to stop thinking. The mind is meant to just wander from one cognitive processing to another. And so we can't really stop the brain from thinking, but we can learn to train the mind to hold awareness on the thing that we want to pay attention to and to not get pulled away in constant distraction through automatic thought. Some people think that meditation has this goal of stopping thought, and that's really not the case, nor is it really possible. Meditation is just a practice for helping the brain be able to have more mindfulness or more present moment awareness. There's many different things we can anchor our attention to in meditation. Meditation for sure is a great practice to help you be able to sleep well. There's many different mindfulness therapies that are meant to help with insomnia. So we can attend to the breath, the body, or we can take the brain, the thinking mind, into imagery work. There's other things that we can do, like listening to instrumental music, just quiet, calm, gentle music that's very soothing. You might think of the type of music they play in a spa with just instruments or harps or piano, wooden flute, just very mellow, soothing instrumental sounds. Maybe you prefer something like nature sounds, the sound of rain or ocean waves. But sound can help us get out of thinking mind as well. So you wouldn't want to listen to music with lyrics or that has any relevance to your life. You really want a neutral auditory stimulus, which is where instrumental music is so helpful. So if you can't get your mind to calm down, you're feeling restless in your body, you might put on some music just to help you get to sleep. There's even specific types of music that is written in wave tone, sound waves that are meant to create similar brainwave activity as we go from an active brain state into theta waves, which is when we're getting sleepy, into delta waves of deep sleep. So you can research that. There's different hertz of music tones that have been really engineered to be specifically useful for helping the brain electrically shift into brainwave activity that mimics sleep. So we have all these different choices we can make. Sometimes, though, we just cannot wind down. And so then people often look for strategies that will biochemically help them relax or shift into more melatonin production. Melatonin as a supplement is used widely, and it's really not given the respect as far as the potential power and influence a synthetic hormone can have on the body. The biggest sleep experts in the world, so I would direct you to the work of Dr. Matthew Walker. He wrote a really groundbreaking book called Why We Sleep. And Dr. Walker, through all of his extensive research on the whole field of sleep science, does not recommend melatonin is used on a regular basis. His conclusion is that melatonin is really best used for jet lag, shifting the circadian rhythm. So if you are traveling east and you're now in a time zone in which you need to try to go to bed earlier relative to the time zone you live in, melatonin can help you reset and shift the melatonin production cycle, perhaps, helping you get to bed at a reasonable time to adjust your sleep cycle to be in that new time zone. But he does not recommend melatonin being used on a regular basis because it has unknown impacts on our natural production of melatonin, and also is not shown to increase sleep very much. So synthetic melatonin might help you initiate sleep, but you very often will wake up a few hours later and struggle to go back to sleep. It could also disrupt your body's own natural melatonin mechanisms. One thing that is known for sure is that children who take melatonin regularly might have an impact in puberty, where puberty onset is actually delayed. I don't think we have the science yet to know what that really means for people as far as health outcomes, but certainly we don't want our children to be dependent on a synthetic hormone to have to get to sleep at night. So I don't recommend melatonin, but there are other things that you might consider using. I would like to preface this talk on supplements by making sure that you know that I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. My credential is having a PhD in clinical psychology, but I have been studying functional medicine for well over a decade, and I have read an incredible amount about optimizing sleep. But please do consult with your doctor, with your psychiatrist, if you need to get medical guidance on deciding whether or not to use herbs or supplements to help with your sleep. So certainly we can try to help melatonin production naturally through giving the body the building blocks it needs to be able to make our own melatonin. We don't often ask this question about where do our hormones come from? Where does serotonin come from? How does the body make dopamine? Where does melatonin come from in the body? And we know that melatonin has certain precursors to it, and we can enhance our own production of melatonin through eating the right foods or possibly taking some supplements to help out. So if you have heard of tryptophan, or the stereotype for that is thinking of turkey making you sleepy after your Thanksgiving dinner. Well, tryptophan is an amino acid that is the precursor to serotonin, and then serotonin is converted into melatonin. So serotonin plays a very important role in sleep. So what we can do is do a little bit of research on which foods increase our levels of tryptophan naturally. So it is true that free-range poultry has helpful amino acids that will increase tryptophan, serotonin, then melatonin for ourselves to help with our own natural melatonin production. Also, grass-fed dairy. So I wouldn't recommend a bowl of ice cream due to all the difficulty of digesting saturated fats at nighttime, the high level of sugars. We really want to keep our blood sugar as stable as we can. That's another concern with synthetic melatonin use, is that it can disrupt glucose metabolism in the body. So we can, though, eat perhaps grass-fed organic yogurt. You might add a few berries or a little bit of natural maple syrup for some sweetener. That can be a helpful snack in the evening, and there's properties to grass-fed dairy that are helpful for sleep. Additionally, oatmeal is really good for sleep. So you might have like some oatmeal cookies just to help with resting in the nighttime. So you might add to those oatmeal cookies nuts like almonds or walnuts, seeds like pumpkin or sunflower, flax and chia ground up in there, maybe also cinnamon and turmeric, things that are really beneficial for inflammation. So you could have a healthy oatmeal cookie prepared as a nighttime snack, or just a small bowl of oatmeal could be a good choice. There's research on kiwis. The actual fruit of kiwi has properties that can help with sleep. Also, tart cherry juice. There's many choices: nuts, seeds, grass-fed meats and dairy. There's also herbs that we can consider, like chamomile tea. So I would really encourage you to start with behavioral choices first. Always think about, where do I have choice? Let me try to optimize this through my own strategic decisions I make each day. Then we can look for foods to be helpful biochemical support for the body. Then we can maybe look to herbs. And then after herbs, perhaps supplements. And then very lastly, medications if absolutely necessary. There are many different herbs that are known to have relaxant properties and to promote good sleep. Different herbs are better for different people. So for example, women going through menopause might look at certain herbs versus others. Some of the ones to consider and to research on your own would be things like valerian root, chamomile tea, but also you can take a chamomile extract as a supplement. Hops is actually a calming herb that you can find in pill form, usually in a blended herbal supplement for sleep. Kava, although I will warn you that if you take too much kava, it can have some toxicity effects on the liver. So we always want to do our due diligence, talk to our doctor, do our own research, and really make sure that we're making an informed decision before we take any herbal supplement or a synthetic supplement. Other herbs to consider would be passion flower, also California poppy. There are several, and so do a little bit of reading on potential herbs to help with sleep. Very often you can find them already in a combination blended capsule, and that might diversify your benefits. Also lemon balm, and lemon balm can also be a lovely tea. You can find herbal teas just for sleep. They might have chamomile, lemon balm, lavender, and those teas can be really helpful. Of course, you want to leave a window to try to not have to get up and use the bathroom too soon after going to bed, so maybe at least an hour before bed to have that calming tea. I also feel the need to forewarn people, tea bags are not ideal. Often tea bags have microplastics in them, and then when you add that to hot water, that can create some toxins. I really recommend loose leaf tea. Buy yourself one of those little metal tea ball strainers and try to avoid tea bags. Not to mention, loose teas are much more affordable and really don't cost much if you can buy them in bulk. So herbs can be very helpful. Following those, we might consider certain vitamins and supplements that can be useful. Magnesium is one that I can very easily recommend. There's so much research on magnesium, and more than half of Americans have clinically deficient levels of magnesium. All of us would probably feel better and sleep better if we could optimize our magnesium levels. Magnesium is an essential building block for hundreds of biological functions in the body, for essential basic cellular mechanisms to be able to work. So we all should be concerned about magnesium. There's lots of great foods to help with magnesium: black beans, dark leafy greens, anything with chlorophyll. So all the green foods are really helpful. But if you want to take a magnesium supplement, there's different ways to go. So one thing to consider is taking an Epsom salt bath in the evening. So through an Epsom salt bath, we're actually allowing the skin to absorb what it wants and needs from that magnesium in the Epsom salts. So that's a nice way to have a wind down ritual, just to take about a 15-minute nice hot bath, maybe a cup of Epsom salt. You could also add in some lavender essential oils. Those things are really helpful for helping the physical body and nervous system start to wind down. Now, I know I told you that you want to be cool to sleep, and a hot bath sounds counterproductive. But actually, when we, in the short term, heat the body, so whether we take a hot shower, maybe a 15-minute bath, or even a sauna, that actually helps cool down the core temperature in the body. So when the body gets heated, that's why we kind of turn pink or flush. There's circulation shifting out to the skin, the body trying to regulate its internal temperature. So when you get out of the tub or shower and you dry off, you might feel you get chilly really fast. And that's because your actual core temperature was a little bit lowered through temporarily heating up your skin and sweating just a little bit. You wouldn't want to take a really long bath or a really extended sauna because you might then raise your core temp. But a short-term release of body heat through a nice warm bath can really help cool the internal body temperature and prepare you to have really good sleep. Another way that you can get magnesium safely is through magnesium lotion. So you can actually buy lotion that already has magnesium infused into it, and you can put that on the soles of your feet or on your lower legs, which is also known to be helpful for restless leg syndrome. If you would like to take an oral magnesium supplement, it seems that now everybody studying optimal brain function is recommending a type of magnesium called magnesium threonate. threonate, threonate. Magnesium threonate has been shown to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively and probably has a little bit better neurological benefits than other forms of magnesium. There's other types of magnesium, like a magnesium citrate is really helpful for constipation. It's a very powerful stool softener. So depending on your situation, you might want a different type of magnesium, but all magnesium is a relaxant to the nervous system and helps to bring the nervous system into a more balanced place and is slightly sedating. So you'd want to take that magnesium about an hour before bed just to start winding down. Other supplements that might be helpful, vitamin D3. Again, most people do not have sufficient vitamin D3. We live mostly indoors. We don't get enough direct sun exposure on the skin. And vitamin D comes from the sunlight converting cholesterol in your skin into vitamin D, which is also incredibly essential for overall physiological function in the body and especially supporting your immune system. But vitamin D is also a precursor to many of the hormones the body creates. And so supplementing vitamin D3, ideally paired with vitamin K2, which will help it go into the right places in the body, help with the bioavailability of the vitamin D we take, that can be a very helpful supplement to take. Also, zinc. Zinc is an essential nutrient for mental health, for brain function, immune function, and you don't need a lot, but often zinc can be a piece of the puzzle to optimizing our mental health and our success at sleeping well. There's also research showing omega-3 fatty acids are beneficial for sleep. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They're really what the brain is built from, and we need these really healthy fatty acids. And so taking omega-3s can also be a way to assure that your body has what it needs to sleep well. Another herb I should mention is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for a very long time. It's known to be very calming. It's used for anxiety treatment. It's helpful for sleep. And it's a very safe herb that's been used for a really long time and does have clinical trials to show that it does have true clinical benefits. Now, if you want to move beyond herbs and beyond food into other supplements, some other things you might consider for sleep would be a substance called L-theanine. L-theanine is an amino acid found in green tea. It's known to help with anxiety. It's known to help with sleep. I always would recommend that you be doing your research and talking to your doctor about this. But for some people, L-theanine gives them more vivid dreams or can exacerbate sleepwalking. So that's just something to be aware of. But L-theanine is a calming supplement that can be taken. Similarly, GABA. G-A-B-A. GABA, like melatonin, is a naturally occurring neurotransmitter, actually, that your body makes. It's a calming, called inhibitory neurotransmitter. But you can also take GABA as an amino acid supplement. And so this can come in a powder form that you can drink, or there's lozenges you can just suck on. And they say that GABA is so quick acting that you might feel yourself calming down from anxiety within just a few minutes. So GABA could be something to consider trying as well. There's another vitamin called myo-inositol. Myo-inositol also has been shown to help with anxiety and insomnia and helps to relax the nervous system. So what I'd like for you to really take from this lecture today is the importance that you Not just plop in bed and hope sleep shows up for you each night, but to become strategic. Actually make a plan. Take a little bit of time to set your intention. Knowing what time you need to get up in the morning, what time would be ideal for you to go to bed at night? I try to carve out 8.5 hours for my own sleep. I really need about 8 hours of sleep to wake up feeling refreshed and as well rested as I need to be ready to get up. Some people get by with 7 hours of sleep. Some people think they do fine with less than 7 hours, but the research would say that they are impaired and that there are detrimental effects on health and brain function if we get less than 7 hours of sleep each night. So know when you have to get up. Try to dedicate at least 8 to 9 hours of time in bed, and make sure that you're strategic in trying to lower the lighting in your house, winding down, maybe a little bit of light stretching, possibly thinking about a snack to help stabilize blood sugar, but also some of those helpful nutrients or amino acids that can help you bring on melatonin production. Thinking about, what is my mind doing right now? Am I stressed or overthinking? And when you get into bed, trying to anchor the mind to a point of awareness, whether that's the breath, body scan, a visual image, or perhaps even music. So trying to help the mind come into some stillness, into some quiet. Now, you might do all these things and you might still find yourself lying awake at night. In that case, the best thing you can do is just deeply relax. So what can happen sometimes is that we know sleep is important. We know how bad we feel when we've had a rough night. And so we might start to get anxious as we're watching the clock and the hours are ticking by and we're still not asleep. And that's really not helpful. You probably should get out of bed. The recommendation is that if you've been in bed for 30 to 60 minutes and you're still awake, to get up for a brief break and go back and try again. It often is like a reset where we just need to step out of bed, cool down, change the scenery for a minute, get back in bed and start over. But if you're in bed and struggling to sleep, practice relaxation, practice mindful awareness, continually come back to awareness of breath, awareness of body, quieting the mind, even practicing what's called open monitoring. Just holding this broad awareness of everything in that moment, including the body and breath and sensations. So deep relaxation is often sufficient in helping us feel okay the next day, even if we didn't get enough hours of deep sleep. So in the morning, bright light, energy in the body, upbeat music, movement, fresh air, sun to the eyes, to the skin. Of course, always protect your eyes. You never want to look directly at the sun or have any sense of eye strain. But the more you can look upward and take in that blue tones of the morning light and to tell the brain it's daytime, that will restart your melatonin cycle, your body knowing when to start to fall asleep about 14 to 16 hours from the morning time. We also want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves throughout the day, getting some movement, eating good nutrition. In the evening, lowering lights, quieting down our homes, slowing down our activity level. And if we can do this, then we're really going to be prepared for sleeping better. One thing you might also consider is journaling before you go to bed. So sometimes we just have too much to process in the brain. And putting some of those thoughts and concerns or plans down on paper has also been shown to be helpful with sleep. But ultimately, it comes down to being strategic, honoring your need for sleep, telling yourself, turn off the TV, lower the light, start to wind down, leave time for a short bath or shower, do a little bit of breathing as I go to bed, and really take your sleep seriously. Realize how much control you have, how many choices you have to help bring your body into the physiology in which sleep becomes possible. I know this was a lot of information today, but I really want to give you all the empowering tools, all the areas in which you have choice to become strategic to sleep well. In my next video, I'm going to be talking about how parents can help optimize sleep for their children. Thank you. Thank you for joining me at Root Cause of Happiness. If this information was useful to you, please share it with others seeking knowledge and tools for resilience. It is a meaningful contribution to the world when we become proactive in our healing journeys, by learning and growing, by increasing our awareness, by addressing the root cause of happiness.